Okay, everyone, here we have a post courtesy of Prism Azure over on the Dokkan Reddit. Make sure you guys are checking out the Reddit. I'll leave a link down below. But that being said, we're going to talk about the brand new upcoming EZA Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta. Hope you guys enjoy. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel if you are new for more content. And again, let me know in the comments down below which unit you are most impressed with. You know, I did my video breaking down all 7 of the upcoming EZAs, right? And a lot of people were impressed with different units for different reasons. Like, I personally am not super impressed with the Evil Boo, but I do recognize he's going to be really good versus, for example, Super Battle Road for the Majin Buu Saga, right? But I don't really like him too much because he's not going to be great in most cases. I don't like those situational units, right? I like a unit like Vegeta who's going to be good basically everywhere, be able to do everything they can do always, right? So that being said, let me know who you guys are most impressed with. But for my most impressed list, Int 13 is just nuts, right? Int 13 is going to be incredible. And then Nova Shenron is going to be incredible. Like, these are units that got very profound updates, which is why I think for a lot of people, Vegeta's kind of flying under the radar. And Goku's flying pretty high above the radar with his built-in crit, right? But again, very expansive list of characters. If you'd like to see my video, check it out. But that's a little bit of insight into how I think about units, right? But let's take a look at the post here. So, quick post I wanted to make because I found that to be impressive. The latest Extreme Z Awakening batch revealed an EZA for the AGL Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta, who became a defensive powerhouse. He now has 90% attack and defense at the start of the turn, 30% attack and defense for 6 turns with each super attack he does. Defense plus 15% for each attack received, up to a maximum of 60%. So yeah, there's a whole lot of defense in his kit, right? All of these boosts are multiplicative and will enhance each other. It means that after taking 4 hits and super attacking 3 times, Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta will obtain a defensive boost of 477%. Now, assuming you get an additional super on all of those turns, and therefore super attack 6 times, the defensive boost will end up being 751%. In practice, Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta has an 11,822 defensive stat post-EZA at 100% hidden potential activation. So that is the defensive number he should have with 100%, right? 11,800 defense at 100% with his EZA. And he is able to benefit from a 170% defensive leader skill on all 4 of his categories. For the record, yes, every category he has access to 170% defensive boost, right? So he's able to benefit from the profound defense in every single team. Therefore, in a scenario where your Vegeta is under 2 170% defensive leads, which is every scenario pretty much if you run category meta, has 100% activation, took 4 hits, and super attacks 6 times in 3 turns, he can get a natural 442,767 defensive stat, and that's not even adding in supports. So the reason why, if you guys are confused about that, the Vegeta does have a 6-turn stack, but it also does count the turns he's not there. So basically cut that in half, which is why it's nice to have longer stacks, right? Because if the unit's on rotation with a 3-turn stack, it's just, oh, they're here, they get it, and then the following time they show up is when they can generally benefit from it. But that being said, it's just kind of like, it falls off, you know, but 6 turns means you have that extra setup there. So it can be realistically achieved by building him with additional attacks level 20 in the hidden potential, and even without that, his defense is still through the roof and allows him to take no damage from even the Ultra Instinct Goku, the Int one, in the legendary Goku battle. And he is entirely free with the Tanabata celebration, allowing you to purchase him with the treasure. So the Vegeta's defensive number gets over 442,000 in the best case scenario. He does mention that even if you don't get additional supers on each of the 3 turns that you'd see the Vegeta, again, every other turn, whatever the case is, with the rotations, right? Assuming he's on rotation, of course. Even if you don't get that, he is still going to be in a position where he doesn't even take damage from Ultra Instinct Goku because his natural defensive number is so absurdly high. So you have a unit that has the natural 90% at the start of the turn, just base, right? And then he is able to get 15% with each attack received, up to a maximum of 60. That is such a quick stack that he can get that realistically done on the same turn, right? Depending on how the attacks are lined up, he can get that whole 60% additional defensive bonus within 1 turn. If not in 1 turn, definitely by the 2nd turn, right? So, like, you can really get that very easily. And then he has an attack, which allows for him to attack a little bit harder, of course. The attack gain on the super attack for 6 turns as well, which doesn't even get mentioned in this post. He's going to do, basically have a unit here that's going to do very solid defense, right? Or very solid offense, excuse me, very solid damage numbers, but be one of the better defensive units overall. So this is actually not unheard of, right? This is maybe not exactly to this extent, right? Because I haven't seen the defensive calculations for every single card in the game, right? But being a unit that's this well-rounded with like maybe 70% defensive focus and then 30% offensive focus, but it's high enough because the number is so high, is not unheard of. Like, we have a similar setup on a lot of Vegeta cards here that are just generally like defensive units, right? They generally tend to make the Vegeta variants, even if they invert the card between Vegeta and Goku, they're the same cards, kind of invert it, make Goku the offensive one, like the LRSS4s, for example. They're basically the same freaking card, but one of them has a defensive start, the other one has the offensive start. One of them raises defense on the 12 key, the other one raises attack on the 12 key. They're just inverted cards, right? So they generally do that quite a bit, and a lot of times Vegeta winds up being the defensive variant. So really, that unit can slot into, we go back over here and take a look at what he is right now. He's not good at all right now, but post-super, again, he picks up stacking, which he didn't have in the first place, and picks up an additional source of defense. But I do want to mention that his links are actually pretty cool because he can actually slot into Resurrected Warriors relatively well because he has access to the Revival link too, and also Shatter the Limit to by a lesser extent. Sometimes you might, use that or whatever the case is, but mainly he has Revival, and that's something you can use really easily. He also has Prepare for Battle. So really, when we look at the Resurrected Warriors team in general, there are not a whole lot of Saiyans as far as like this category is concerned. There's a good number of them, but not a lot that I'd personally consider using. But what I can say is any of them that have Prepare for Battle and or need access to Prepare for Battle are in a very good spot, right? Also, if they have Prepare for Battle and or Rebirth, or not Rebirth, excuse me, well, Rebirth too, but Revival, for example, they're in an even better spot. Let's go ahead and take a look at the LR Broly, for example, as an option on this team. So he has access to Prepare for Battle, so that's good there for him. He also has Super Saiyan and Saiyan Warrior Race. Those are all links that Vegeta is able to trigger for this guy if you need those links on this type of team setup. But when we go back and take a look at some of the other teams that Vegeta has access to, where he has obviously more synergy, right? He has access to Majin Buu Saga, which is a good category, of course, and it's very defense-oriented. In fact, it has some of the better defensive units that I'd say you can kind of just pair with this guy, right? You could, if you want to really go full-on defense, you can bring the LR Great Saiyaman and stack this guy's defense even higher, right? Because the numbers on this list don't even account for support units. This is just his own defense. This doesn't even account for supports. So realistically, his defense can get really high, right? And then, of course, you also do have access to a guy like Super Vegito here, and you can just make a very good defensive team overall. We also do have Pure Saiyans, which has access to literally every Pure Saiyan in the game, and we were looking at Vegeta's family previously here. So Pure Saiyans, as far as this one is concerned, you have a lot of the same options overall, but you can also make a very good blend between teams. Now, the thing about this Vegeta is, in my opinion, I think that, again, I think he flies a little bit below the radar as far as like what he is. I think when you look at the list of characters, I think it's very easy to get caught up in some of the other units just because of the impacts they're going to have on their respective teams. Like I mentioned, the Android 13 variants, namely, I'm very impressed with Int because he had a very big shift. He's going to be insane. Tech is a very good free-to-play option. But the Android 13 variants, nonetheless, are going to fit very well on their teams. They have spots on their teams. Like, when it comes down to these units that are Pure Saiyans in general, there's so much variety here, right? You have access to a ton of different options, and the good news is when it comes to Vegeta, if you're looking to build a defensive team, if you're looking to build a defensive core, for example, maybe you're struggling with the Legendary Goku event, well, we already know his defense is so high that he's going to be insane. He's going to be one of the better units you can take here from a defensive standpoint. So yeah, you probably do want to consider using him, right? But again, if we go back and look at the other list of characters that are going to be available for the EZA, and we take a look at a character like the Nova Shenron, well, look at this list of characters. This is not anywhere near as expansive, so he's going to be amazing here, right? Like, it's going to be good depending on the options you have. So ultimately, though, Vegeta, when we come back and take a look at him, on the Vegeta family team, he has a really good and interesting situation. Because the Vegeta family team has access to some very potent support units. For example, Bulla, while she's not a defensive support, is still one of the better offensive rainbow supports in the game just for any unit, right? Unrestricted pretty much. She also does offer key if by chance you happen to need that due to your team setup. We also do have access to the EZA Vegeta and Trunks units as well, who are, again, very good support units for offense and defense as well. But we also do have access to some, when it comes down to it too, good offensive units, and then I already mentioned some incredible defensive options here. We have the stacking, nonetheless, very, very incredible. Galagun Vegeta. We do have SSJ Vegeta, who when matched up versus movie bosses is able to have a good chance of stunning the enemy as well if it's applicable, but regardless is able to guard against all attacks, has the built-in Janemba mechanic. We also have access to, yes, none other than the SS4 Vegetas, depending on what type of team you're using. The AGL is still really, really good. SSBE, who is good defensively and offensively, and then transforms and picks up the crit in his passive. We have the limitless stacking Trunks here. Like, there's a lot of good option on this category too, and I don't think that the Vegeta winds up being a quote-unquote optimal unit, right? I think in order for him to really have been something like that, when it comes down to him, he would have needed more links that fit well among other good Vegeta units. Like, for example, Super Saiyan's awesome. Saiyan Warrior Race it's okay. I mean, it's just kind of here, right? It's 700 attack. It needs to be changed. Some of these links just need to be updated. Golden Warrior is never a bad thing to have. Royal Lineage, pretty much going to have that on just about every Vegeta family card. What was that link called initially, by the way? That link's name was changed. It was called, like, I don't know, something. I don't know. Revival, while I mentioned how it's good on other teams, it's practically useless on the Vegeta family team for the most part, right? Unless you're alongside a Majin Vegeta. I think Majin Vegeta has that link. He does not even have that link. Maybe another Majin Vegeta will have that link. Just for the record, before we move on, the most recent one, he does not have it. But what I will say is, again, what I was actually going to bring up is access to something like Saiyan Pride, right? Having access to Saiyan Pride would have been so huge for this unit because it would have evened out his offense a little bit better and just made him more well-rounded as far as the Vegeta family team is concerned, right? But he doesn't have access to that. He doesn't really need like anything else like Supreme Power or anything weird like that. But that would have been the biggest thing that I would have liked to have had on this unit. So it's unfortunate they don't update links with EZAs because there are a lot of units that just over the course of all the EZAs could have benefited from an additional key link or an additional attack link. But again, this guy, like I mentioned earlier, is 70% defense, basically 30% offense. Maybe if you want to go 60-40, you could do that. He has a heavy defensive focus, but the best thing about him is, again, the defense number gets so insanely high that when coupled on these 170 defensive teams, he's just going to be in a position where he just doesn't take any damage ultimately. And if you have access to, again, Majin Buu Saga, you're going to get a 170 in HP and defense. For the most part, the other categories, well, there's only 4 here, right? Pure Saiyans has access to 150 and just different things like that between their multiple leaders. But for the most part, you know, having access to both of those means you're just going to be in a very tanky situation. And I think that if you have the defensive number high enough, you can pretty much just beat any content in the game. Now, when it comes down to the Super Battle Road scene, right, he's going to be very good versus the Majin Buu Saga Super Battle Road just in general because his defense can stack so high. But I think that the biggest issue with this card, right, is the slow build-up. Like, that's the biggest issue with this guy is his turn 1. So if you go ahead and take a look at him, for turn 1, he's only going to have 90% attack and defense. So under 170 defense, that's fine. He's going to be just fine, right? But his turn 1 is where he's most susceptible to take damage, which makes sense, right? Because he has to sit there in a compromised position to take all of these 15% damage or defense bonus stacks, and then also have the super attacks as well invested to raise defense. So personally, like mentioned in the post, if you want to make the most out of this unit as quickly as possible, I would invest 20%, or at least, I don't know, well, 20, it would technically be 40%, but at least level like 17 in additional for this guy overall, as far as like trying to brute force some more super attacks. The only downside is additional doesn't guarantee super attacks, but it's still going to be way more beneficial if you can get that lucky roll. So ultimately, let me know what you guys think. Are you guys impressed by the Vegeta? Do you think that when it comes down to the EZAs, this Vegeta will be very useful? Do you think he's going to be good, maybe just situationally in certain spots? Because, again, he does have a slow build-up. But, again, there are different units, like I mentioned on the list. And I'll go back to Evil Buu again because he was the one I was probably most critical of. I think he's good, right? But just personally, with my own thought process with this game, I'd just like to have access to I'd like to have access to everything, right? And that includes things like stunning, attack and defense down. The way that the game has handled those mechanics over the last couple of years, basically nullifying them in most cases, they're nice to see on passives and stuff, but it's like, okay, well, when am I ever going to get this versus the harder content, right? So that being said, unless it's Super Battle Road, because you can do whatever you want there. So that being said, he's going to be phenomenal there, but he's not even going to, literally, parts of his passive don't even exist in most other content. So that's just how I feel about it. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed today's video. Hit the subscribe if you're new. Check out the post down below, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next one.